Welcome to Your County on Community 7 Television. I'm Shoots Veis and I'm your host. Each month we look at a different aspect of what's going on in Yellowstone County. This week we're really lucky. We get to be outside a beautiful Pioneer Park, and we're going to visit with Justice of the Peace, David Carter. Justice Carter, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. I'm sure it's been an interesting last couple of months, and we're going to dive deeply into that. But before we do, let's talk a little bit about Justice Court. What is Justice Court? What's your role at Justice Court? And then maybe how is Justice Court a little bit different than District Court or stuff like that? So let's just start with the baseline.
Absolutely. Yellowstone County Justice Court, there are two judges, Judge Walker and I. As a result of that, we're responsible as a court of limited jurisdiction for basically all the misdemeanors in the county. We assist the District Court. There are 8 separate departments with regards to, if necessary, initial appearances, setting bonds. And then we have a whole civil side. The civil side is everything from small claims, landlord-tenant, to general contract disputes. Usually there's a monetary limitation of $12,000, so they represent not necessarily small cases from the standpoint of what the dispute is about, but I mean there is a limited jurisdiction, or again a dollar amount up to $12,000. We sometimes have to address the return of property, and as a result of that, we also do orders of protection. We're the primary court, in conjunction also, though, with Billings Municipal Court, that deals and processes order of protections through all of Yellowstone County.
Okay. And let's get a sense for, prior to the pandemic, what was the courtroom like? How busy were you? How many people came through in a day? Who was there? Give us a sense for what life was like prior to the pandemic.
So prior to the pandemic, the Yellowstone County Justice Court was all about volume in the courtroom. We would see upwards of 100 to 120 people per day with the 2 respective courts, both in the civil and the criminal side. People would be coming to the court for open court, most notably citations, and those citations are both violent crime and traffic, and as a result of that, those individuals would be processed. We see individuals from the jail 3 o'clock every afternoon, Monday through Fridays, and as a result, people would also come into the court, pay fines, get assistance, file paperwork, etc. So it was always a busy court from the standpoint of people coming into the court prior to the pandemic. So there would be long lines, Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. I think some people are quite familiar with that. And as a result, we had this face-to-face interaction, and we're able to assist people. That was kind of what transpired prior to the pandemic. Since the pandemic, we've had to change from the standpoint of trying to reduce the volume. One, obviously, what we want to make sure is people can social distance, they can feel safe. And 2, be able to still be clear and concise and get good information to them in a timely manner so that they know what they need to do, whether they're seeking to sue someone, okay, on the civil side, or required to come to court because of traffic or other crimes.
All right. And I know you also probably deal with a lot with talk a little bit about the Self-Help Law Center and maybe some of the clerk responsibilities too, and what they were before and how they have had to change through the pandemic, and how you guys interact with both of those resources that are available to people that are coming to court.
That's an excellent question. So the Yellowstone County Justice Court, on the civil side, the majority of litigants are self-represented litigants. We're talking about 85 to 90% of the people do not have a lawyer. So we played a critical role with giving people an understanding of what their role was as a litigant. The clerks played that role, the courts played that role in person in the courtroom. We had hearings with people. Again, when you do have that sort of person-to-person conversation, you can walk them through the process. We've had to take that and move that either to a type of platform, video conference platform, so Zoom, Microsoft Teams, different types of platforms, or we've have a full-time sort of position where we reach out to litigants and give them notice as to what needs to happen. So we specifically spend a lot of time on the phone with people, giving them this information. We have obviously dedicated emails. We receive a lot of emails and we send a lot of emails. And so we always are in contact and making sure that as critical points in an individual case come, that the litigants know where they need to be, how they're going to appear, and what they need to do.
Okay. And so when did you guys kind of start? I mean, I'm sure you could. In Montana, we were, I guess, blessed a little bit to say that we could see this coming. When did you guys start kind of planning, and when did you realize, man, life as we know it day to day is really going to change, and we need to start thinking about that? When did you guys start that process?
So Judge Walker and I, we were very proactive in this aspect. We did sort of look at to what other courts were doing in larger jurisdictions: New York, California, Washington State, Texas, Colorado, Illinois, Florida, and as a result said, if we get to this point or there's an issue, especially if the governor was going to issue a stay-at-home order or a shelter-in-place order, that we need to have a contingency plan. So we actually started in the first week of March. Did not necessarily start to implement the programs, but built within our personnel in the court, built within our procedures and protocols, implementing technology. By about mid-March, we were ready to go to a reservation system. So it was designed that if you wanted to be in court, we would reach out to you, you would confirm that reservation, and our scheduling worked in conjunction with that. Additionally, we had a process to address paperwork, get paperwork to litigants, have them get it back to us through email or other social media platforms if necessary, so that we didn't have to have people come into the courthouse, wait in line, be helped face to face, which could put people at risk and also put, obviously, personnel at risk.
Sure. So talk to us about some of the things you guys put in place. The video conferencing, what's available to litigants that way, what's available to people who are very tech savvy, and what's available to people who are not very tech savvy.
So assuming that the litigant has a dedicated system that allows them to appear, by video, we have the major platforms, so Zoom, which has sort of come to the forefront globally, as sort of a major platform that the average person can use video conferencing technology. We obviously have WebEx. We also have Microsoft Teams. And finally, we had a dedicated, and it always had a dedicated iPhone. So that iPhone allowed for FaceTime technology for people who were on an iOS platform. Additionally, if they want to appear by phone, so long as not a contested hearing and that doesn't need to be a face-to-face interaction, we would allow people to appear by phone. We developed orders that required them, to provide any evidence, so exhibits, photographs, documents, printouts of text messages, etc. Those needed to be provided within 24 hours prior to the hearing. So the court had them, the other party had them. So we all knew what we were talking about, even though maybe somebody wasn't present in the courtroom. Then we also had the ability, even during proceedings, that if someone wanted to send it to us, there's a little bit of delay, but you could send it during the proceeding. The goal was to get as much as you could on the front end, and then if necessary and there was an exception and something needed to be submitted, it could. It's actually worked quite well. We found that people are actually quite accommodating. When you think about it, the average person, if given the opportunity to have a call from the court, versus come in and wait in line and then wait their turn in court, sort of sometimes would, if you think about it, choose option A. The thing that is important is we can't really dedicate directly to a time. We have a reservation system that had blocks of time, and then we would tell people, like, for example, a telephone, you have to be available between 2 and 4 p.m., and we would work through it as quickly as possible. And if anyone that's in the court first, we address that because we want to obviously limit the volume of people who are in the hallways in the single working elevator in the courtroom. And then we would go to the telephone, and we go, and obviously as you check in, that's the person we call. So first in time, first in right. As a result of that, it's actually worked out quite well. There have been a few situations. There are questions you have to ask that you normally wouldn't ask. So when I'm on the phone, I will often hear that somebody's driving. And I will say, "Are you driving?" "Yes." And we literally wait for them to pull over to the side of the road, get to a safe place, because obviously I'm not going to have a proceeding involving them where they could be distracted, placing everyone in danger. So there's these sort of things that, you learned and become normal, become part of that. Additionally, it does take a little bit longer in certain ways because each individual person has to be explained the entire protocol or procedure. So at the beginning, we would have 30 people in a courtroom, and we would play a video that sort of laid out what the nature of the proceedings are, what your role is, what questions you'll need to ask, or you will be asked, and then you need to answer. And so that has become a little bit repetitive because you need to be able to systematically call people and walk them through the process. So it does require a sense of patience and diligence. You have to go through that, but it has actually worked out quite well. We were fortunate enough, thinking that this was going to be problematic, and had contingency planning that if there was a stay-at-home or a shelter-in-place order, we asked that a lot of the work be delayed. So for people who got citations in March and April and into May, their appearance dates were on the back half of May into June. We're working through June now into July of 2020. So your appearance date in court was automatically built into the idea and concern that you wouldn't be able to come into court again March, April, and May. Law enforcement put that into their respective system, and it's worked out excellent.
All right. Did you guys ever did you have a week there where you were just shut down because the stay in place order came through and you had to do that, or did you guys just keep going through the whole thing and court was never shut down for any amount of time?
Court was never shut down due to the shelter in place or stay at home order, because we had first done that delay. Okay, so we could handle the volume. And we were able to smooth it out. I mean, that's what happens. I mean, when you think about it, right. So you hope for the best, but you plan for the worst. Mm-hmm. And as a result of that, we had built those contingency plans and could just lay them out and employ them week by week. And so we actually never shut down because of that situation. There was one day where there was a concern, where we thought we didn't actually shut the court down. Mm-hmm. I was just its sole employee for a day. And so what had happened is that, there was concern that one individual may have contracted COVID, and that ended up being a negative test. Okay. But obviously from a personnel standpoint, we thought it was just appropriate to limit contact. So everyone took advantage of the CARES Act, which is what it was there for. Right. Okay. And I was the sole employee of the court. So I answered the phone and I made sure things were taken care of. Obviously, there weren't any proceedings going on, but there was a person at the court to sort of address and take care of the respective court.
Okay. Do many of the people who have to work in the court day in and day out, whether it be clerks or lawyers or whomever, are most of them teleworking at this time and then using the Zoom, the Teams platforms to appear in front of the court or to do their job in front of the court?
They are not. Almost all the staff, is in the court every day, and for the entire time has been. Sure. There have been a couple of individuals that I think were classified as vulnerable population, and as a result, there were some steps to ensure. We were fortunate enough and had planned ahead and tried to get some PPE or protective equipment available, and we were successful in that sense. And so we were able to take steps. The protocols with the PPE came together, and we were able to create that social distance between litigants, the public, and staff. And we were able to, as best as we can, because there is a limitation on our office space, social distance between respective employees. Sure. But no, they have been working diligently. They're tremendous staff. I can't understate the sense of confidence and dedication that individuals in the Yellowstone County Justice Court have shown. The level of professionalism, we were deemed an essential service, and these people truly are essential. And we helped people, and we spent the time on the phone helping people either during the time or rescheduling them to a time that made sense. Right now, we've brought back in jury trials. We have a whole protocol for Jury selection, we have a whole protocol for purposes of where they sit in the courtroom. We have a limitation on the number of people. We have the ability to provide masks, etc. And again, one of the things that's really important is, unlike other parts of our society, and everyone's got differences of opinion and how they treat COVID-19, but most other places, there's kind of an affirmative step that you go there, okay? At least in your personal life.
Right. So if I want to go to a restaurant, I can choose whether I want to go.
Right.
If I want to choose to not go, I can choose not to go there.
Right.
But if you summon me to court, I probably don't have, or you summon me to jury duty, I probably don't have that choice. So kind of what did you guys put in place? Because this is not an optional choice.
That's an excellent question. First, we have a whole protocol to contact them on the front end to determine whether they're a vulnerable population or not. Second, we have, without invading any personal privacy, to determine whether they're showing patent symptoms, of possibly COVID-19. As a result of that, we determine their level of comfort, and that's even before the person shows up. The courtroom has been reoriented from the standpoint that individual jurors, the jury selection process, we're going to use 2 courtrooms, and we have a sort of a polycom or video conference system that allows both courtrooms to work, so we have that extra seating capacity, combined with the fact that once a jury is selected, we have the ability to social distance between the jurors during the trial and in a jury deliberation room. So as a result of that, we also give them PPE, so everyone has a mask. And as a result, obviously, sanitation and hygiene for the purposes of making sure that the area and the procedures of a trial still go forward, but you have the ability to be safe while you're there.
Okay. I'm sure there's, I know you talked about, Justice Court has a fair amount of people who are on the civil side without lawyers, but you do have some folks on the criminal side as well who are involved with the jail. What have been some of the issues that you guys have dealt with the jail? They're a confined space as well. People are not volunteering to be there. What kind of concessions have you had to make as a court because of the precautions made by Yellowstone County Detention Facility?
So first and foremost, clearly Yellowstone County continues and will always continue in the near future, at least, with a jail overcrowding situation. So we were asked by the Montana Supreme Court and in conjunction with the district court, to ensure that decisions were made so that you could reduce the jail population. They were difficult decisions, In the Justice Court, we saw it that unless there was a crime of violence or a readily identifiable victim that we thought that there was going to be contact or future violence, we took steps to reduce that population. That doesn't necessarily mean that those individuals should have been released because of the circumstances of their individual cases, but these are difficult times, and so there were difficult decisions. But it was an attempt to remove as many people that we thought, that were low risk, so that there was more capacity or understanding at the jail. One of the things that I think for me was really important, and it was addressed a little bit, but I don't know if it was completely clear, is if there's a significant outbreak at the jail, you lose the jail as a tool. And so everyone talks about the people who are there, and I recognize that, and their safety is paramount, both obviously inmates, but personnel. But one of the things that's important is that if you don't have the ability to take someone to jail in the nature of violent crime, in the nature of domestic violence, and how those two interact, in the nature of the most significant felonies that we see, that's a major tool that's not available to law enforcement, and it's also a major tool that's just not available in our community. It plays a role. Some people have a different opinion of how critical it is, but to not have it is an absence of a serious tool.
Sure. Did you guys have any, or did Yellowstone County look at any alternate facilities if it wasn't that you could bring someone to the Yellowstone County Detention Facility, maybe you could go elsewhere? Did you guys go through that kind of contingency planning at all?
I was not part of that contingency planning. I think that there are some people who work for Yellowstone County who treat public safety serious. I mean, County Attorney Twido, obviously the district court judges, and going forward, Sheriff Mike Linder. And so I'm assumed contingency planning in there. I was not involved in that. There's too many cooks in the kitchen. And so as a result of that, but that obviously did exist from the standpoint if necessary. We never reached to that point. And I think that's because people were thinking ahead and thinking we need to use our resources in the most apt way under the circumstances at the time.
Sure.
And that happened.
All right. What did you learn about Yellowstone County that you didn't know before the whole pandemic was upon us?
As a community or as an institution, Yellowstone County, the county institution?
As a county institution.
As a county institution, I think one of the things that is important is that there are personalities, and those personalities are either proactive or they're reactive. Okay, if you're proactive, you plan, you have contingencies, you have scenarios, you understand, and the reason you do that is not necessarily because you want that to come. Planning to fail is failing. You understand.
Yep.
And as a result of that, one of the things is that if you are proactive and you have those contingencies, if it does happen, you have shortened the response time. So whether it's public health from the COVID-19 perspective or economic impact from the COVID-19 perspective, having the contingency plan ready to go, again, shortens the response time.
Sure. Now, what about as a community? What have you learned about Yellowstone County as a community through this whole process?
Resilience. We were able to understand and recognize that Yellowstone County is the largest community, okay? It's very diverse in the sense that there are people that live different ways, but everyone seems to show a sense of resilience and a sense of courage. There will be differences of opinion, but I think it's one of these things that we were able to look, to other locations and see whether it's right or wrong. And again, even with differences of opinion, recognize that if it did come here and it came here with full force, that we would have to show courage. I think there was a sense of understanding with the people who live here and work here every day, what was important. And I think there's been a sense of understanding that there's been a lot of people in this community who have suffered. The economic impact was real. And so there was a significant number of underemployment or unemployment as a result of that. And we've come together to help each other.
All right. Have you noticed, and this is probably anecdotally because you probably haven't been able to look at the data, have certain crimes risen? Have certain crimes fallen? Are you seeing, at least it feels to you, a trend in one way or another as far as what you're seeing in the court?
I think the answer is yes, we've seen a trend. Unfortunately, there's been a trend in domestic violence. Mm-hmm. They've seen it, I think, in municipal court, and we've seen it in justice court as a result of that. And we're addressing that. I don't have an answer with regards to drug use. Sure. I don't know if we're seeing a huge uptick or not with regards to use of methamphetamine or other types of drugs. I'd leave that to the county attorney or to law enforcement, who sort of really does address that on a daily basis. We do have seen some traffic components because there's been a financial impact. I mean, there are people with regards to loss of employment, loss of income, loss of housing. There have been huge aspects with licensing, huge aspects with insurance, and we're working to help get those people back on their feet so that they can drive legally, so that they don't find themselves in a precarious situation. So the financial impact has affected us also in traffic.
Okay. Probably one of the unique things, especially for Justice Court, was and I don't know all the details, so I'll leave that up to you. But I believe there was a suspension of evictions and mortgage foreclosures and stuff like that. And now that's ending. Are you guys seeing that come to the court at this point? Did you see it through the whole thing? And I guess what were some of the things that you guys had especially to pay attention to while those evictions were put on hold?
So there were two moratoriums on evictions. There was a federal moratorium and a state moratorium. The federal moratorium applied to if there was subsidized housing, commonly referred to as HUD. subsidies, and other types of situations similar. Okay, the foreclosure I'll just sort of put to the side. I'll talk more about rental and leasing, rental housing, and then as a result of that, there was also a state moratorium. It came into effect March 30th. There was extended twice and then had lapsed on June 1st. As a result of that, assuming that the federal moratorium does not apply, we have seen an uptick in evictions. There have been certain aspects. The moratorium was not a shall we say an excuse or an ability. Didn't affect rent.
You still have to pay your rent. You just don't have to pay it today.
Correct. There were certain limitations, like there couldn't be a charge of late fees, and all the proceedings for eviction were delayed because of the moratorium. But as a result of that, if there was a financial perspective to it, you were still required for rent, but you couldn't be evicted because of non-payment. That unfortunately doesn't necessarily mean that the people haven't sort of created arrears or have multiple months of rent due, and now we're addressing that. We have seen a lot of litigation.
Are you seeing people coming in and they didn't pay in March, they didn't pay in April, they didn't pay in May, and now it's June 1st and it's, $5,000 worth of rent or $2,000 worth of rent or whatever it is, and there's just no way they're going to come up with that.
It is all over the board. I couldn't say that there was a trend. I couldn't give you dollar amounts and sort of what we see in terms of these many cases, but I will say that there were evictions that had started before the moratorium and were delayed. There were evictions where people attempted to file during the moratorium, and now there are evictions that are after it has lapsed. Sure. They're addressing the circumstances. There are still exceptions, to the moratorium lapsing involving a vulnerable population and additionally financial impact because of COVID-19. They're very specific, and those actually continue to apply through the remainder of the emergency declaration. Not the moratorium, not the stay-at-home or shelter-in-place order, but the emergency declaration. They're very specific, and they require a showing by the tenant. But in the absence of that, we are seeing an increase, obviously, in an uptick in evictions, and we're working with that. I think everyone is working with an understanding that this pandemic, was global, and its economic impacts are far-reaching. And whether we are in this for half a year, 2 years, 3 years, whatever that might be, based on anyone's personal perspective, science will tell us that. That we need to figure out how to address these individual circumstances with people's lives, because that's about housing. And housing has obviously, the absence of it and the increase in homelessness has a secondary economic impact on families. It has a secondary impact, on employment, transportation, and health. So we address that every day. Judge Walker and I make sure we have an understanding of what the case is really about, and that everyone can get into the court and tell their story, and we can see if something can be resolved. We facilitate and have mediation. We had a mediation program that was put on hold to reduce the volume of the court. That has been brought back into the forefront to help resolve cases prior to actually going to a trial. And I think we're in a really good place for June of 2020.
All right, good deal. Well, Justice Carter, thanks so much for coming down and sharing your experience with us. I know it's been a unique few months. I'm sure one that neither of us or anyone in Yellowstone County will forget. Thank you guys for all your hard work to keep the court open during this time and all you did to get ready to do that. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to be here.